very warm welcome to Daftaboutcraft, episode 2 of the Craft Beer Podcast. Your hosts, as usual, are me, Dave D.
And me, Dave B.
I hope you've had a good month. Thanks for all your positive feedback and, well, a bit of the negative stuff as well. Not so much of that, thankfully. It's good to hear from you. Good to see lots of download figures as well from people all over the UK. Also a little bit further afield as well. Pretty good. We were pretty happy with that.
It's just been really good to hear feedback from friends, family, and even people that I don't know and Dave doesn't know, just commenting on enjoying it, and we're just looking forward to bringing you plenty more of these.
So if you didn't hear the first edition, you can find it on Spotify and goodness knows what other platforms as well. Wherever you get your podcasts from, I think we should be there. So just take a look, and if this is the first time you've heard us, listen back to that first one as well.
Yeah, most definitely. As Dave says, we are all good places where you get your podcasts, and probably some rubbish ones too. But you can also get in contact with us in a lot of ways. We're on Twitter, Daftaboutcraft1 with a capital D. We're on Instagram, Daftaboutcraft1 with a lowercase d. And you can even email us as well, daftaboutcraft1@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you.
And don't forget, you can also find us on Facebook now. Right, well, we've been out to the pub in the last month. Things are slowly starting to pick up again. And I've been out a couple of times. Dave, you actually went out before me, didn't you?
Yeah, I was very sceptical at first, actually. And I definitely let it die down for that first weekend, but it seemed like quite a few people did as well anyway. My first experience was on a Thursday afternoon, and it was certainly busier than usual for where I went, which was the Arcade Tavern in Ipswich. It was a good experience, and since then, I have been out and had drinks in a couple of other places as well. And I must say, out of probably most areas of society, pubs feel like one of the most normal already, which I didn't expect. And I'm really pleased that they are, because God knows they need our support and have needed a lot of support as a whole of the leisure industry.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I've been out to a couple of pubs. My local one here is the Green Duck in Stourbridge in the West Midlands. They just reopened their tap room, and we went there on the opening night, in fact. And not loads of people, but it was all working really well. No problems at all. Give your name and address as you go in. Yeah, it was all working really well, and it was good to be back in the pub. Good to experience that atmosphere again.
So, one of the features that we aim to do every month is test a brewery out that neither of us have had before. There's always someone new to seek out, and this month's is no exception. So, I will go first with my Brew To Me, which comes from Pentrich Brewing Company. Now, these guys are definitely out and about, and I'm possibly a little bit slower to get into them, but they're not actually all that available down here just yet. I know a bottle shop in Colchester, Two Brews, which I frequent as well. They've managed to get hold of some, but I haven't been able to get hold of any that easily until recently, and I now have a can of Sunshine Thief. It's a 6.2 pale ale, and it is brewed with Mosaic. We've got really nice haze, not much of a head. Very Mosaic on the nose, as you'd expect. I'm getting a nice bit of apricot, quite full, quite soft, but more importantly, how does it taste? Not quite as soft as I thought it might. It's a little bit resiny. It's definitely quite bitter on the finish. The Mosaic's really, I suspect that's quite a good quantity they've got in there. It's definitely enjoyable, and it's probably quite sessionable for 6.2 as well. It's quite a murky orange colour, actually. It's not quite as pale as I thought it might be. The thing that surprised me the most with this is just how much bitterness there is from the Mosaic. Now, I know Mosaic is a hop which does lend itself to bitterness, but they've probably put a fair amount in there.
Does that sit well with you? Is that your bag?
Mosaic is one of my favourites. That, and along with Simcoe and obviously Citra, which, I mean, everyone's just doing various varieties and configurations of Citra, Mosaic and Simcoe. It seems like that's sort of essentially the standard pale a lot of places are making now. So I've got no issue with it at all. It's a good gateway into trying these guys. It makes me want to try more, because I know their dippers have got a lot of good press from what I've seen. I don't know an awful lot about them. There's not a huge social presence from them out there. The website is in its early stages by the looks of it. They're based in Derbyshire, and at the moment the website's more of just a shop. It's not amazing, but it's certainly not bad. I can't say it's not a terrible beer by any stretch. It's a little bit better than average, but I'm not wild about it. I just want to see what else they've got, because as I say, I know the dippers have really had very positive reviews.
It seems to be going down pretty well.
There's always a hole in my glass quite early on. So,
well, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked you at this point last month. How many does it get on the magic, controversial, untapped scale?
It won't be a 4, unfortunately. I wanted it to be. I think that's in the 3.5 territory, maybe 3.75, but it feels more 3.5 to me. It just doesn't quite have that wow factor on top of it for me. And perhaps that is, I know I keep banging on about these dippers having never had them, but perhaps it's held in there that's where that little bit more comes through. This is good, but it could be by quite a lot of other people. So that knocks it down slightly for me. I wouldn't put anyone off trying this.
Daftaboutcraft.
So my fellow Dave gave his Brew To Me 3.5 out of 5. Let's see what I'm going to do. I've got a can in front of me. Now, I've kept seeing this can design, this particular can, all over the internet on various web stores and bottle shops, and it's a Luller from Beak Brewery, a 3.5% table beer, and it's intrigued me. The can is very simple, but it appeals to me. It's just a simple line drawing with Beak Brewery written across the top and Luller 3.5 underneath, and I'm very keen to find out a bit more about it, so I'm going to crack it open. Let's have a look. Now, I know what I'm expecting it to look like, so let's see if it does. Very light in colour. A very large head, but that's probably due to my shocking pouring skills. And I can tell you that Beak Brewery actually based in East Sussex, and up until fairly recently had been sort of nomadic establishment without their own setup and brewing at various different places all over the country at established brewers. Apparently they've used the facilities of North Brew Co in Leeds, Partisan, Beavertown, Burning Sky, Northern Monk. They've got connections there to some pretty good names. And apparently they've, in a month or two ago, they took delivery of their own setup, and they're going to be using that. But I believe that this can of Luller was not from their own setup, but from one of the other places they use. So it'd be really interesting actually to compare this a bit further down the line with something they've actually brewed on their own equipment, see how it matches up. But for now, that head has gone down a bit, so let's give it a whirl. And that's pretty good. We have in there, it is Citra Simcoe with oats and wheat for fluffy mouthfeel. Well, there is quite a bit of mouthfeel there, and it is pretty heavy on that Citra. That really does come through, actually. When I was pouring it out, you can smell that coming across. Bursting with flavours of spruce, lemon zest, and passion fruit. It is a beer for drinking. Well, that's good news. I do get the spruce. It's very drinkable. It's exactly what you would want a table beer to be, in that it is easy drinking, it's not too challenging, and you could just swig it off in the sunshine. And that for me is probably a 3.75, which seems to fit in pretty well. I see the average mark for that on Untapped is 3.82. So it seems like we're in agreement. That's a good little drink, and I would certainly want to go back to them again and try one that they've made at their own setup in Lewes and East Sussex, where also I should mention they are opening a tap room. That will hopefully take them on to the next level, and they can get their name out there and get some more beers out there. I'll be very, very interested to try them. Well, it's that time of the podcast where we look at our top fives, our favourite beers from the previous month. So we're going to be looking at what we've been drinking during the month of July and tell you what we enjoyed best on our top fives.
Daftaboutcraft.
And in at number 5 this month from me, is an 8% fruited goes called Chonka from Hop Hooligans in Romania. Now this was a massively ramped up goes, absolutely masses of guava in there with underlying peaches and raspberries, and a little bit of lactose on the top to finish it off, take it up to that next level. And it really, I've got taste sensation written down here, and it really was really excellent stuff there. I had a couple of cans from Hop Hooligans and they were both good, but this was slightly edged the other one. Really impressed with them. Now, number 4 from Daya. Now, I could have had any number of Dayas in the list this month. They've been churning out some really, really good stuff, and Break Me Into Bigger Pieces went down very, very well, as I know it did with my fellow Dave. We're both big fans of this. It cracked open the can. I actually cracked it open on the promenade at Whitby next to the sea, and the lemon and lime was just bursting out of the can. It was amazing. 6.5%, and that lemon and lime was there on the taste as well all the way throughout. It was really excellent, and I actually checked it in on Untapped and noticed I'd had it before a couple of years earlier, but I had no recollection of that. This must be better than what it was before, because it really sticks in my mind, and that was really excellent. Break Me Into Bigger Pieces from Dea. Number 3, we're going abroad again. We're going to Budapest in Hungary, where the mad scientists have been at it again with a plum dumpling imperial pastry goes at 10%, and you have to excuse my pronunciation, Zilvas Gomboch. That might mean absolutely anything, but what I do know is that this was tremendous. I read somewhere that mad scientists are always flawless, always bold, never boring. And that's very true, because this was excellent. 10%. Marvellous. They did a previous batch that was 12%, but lowered it to 10 apparently to improve the taste experience. And I can't complain at all. That was excellent stuff, and I'm going to get hold of some more mad scientists. In fact, I think I've got a few more in the fridge, and once those are gone, there'll be some more on the way, I'm sure. Number 2 for the month of July. The minute I saw this had been released, I thought this is going to be in the top 5 this month. And here it is. It's the Patrons Project release from Northern Monk in conjunction with Dancing Gnome, the Fudge Sundays. 12% Imperial Stout, cacao and coffee fudge sundae. Basically, it's a pudding in a glass. It's light, not in any way heavy like you might think it would be with the idea of fudge and coffee. It was light, decadent. You could smell the sweetness, that demerara sugar and treacle tones coming through. And absolute magic. Really, really enjoyed that one. And it was only mildly outdone at the top of my list. Number 1 for July. It's a beer called Honey Stout from Untitled Art. I'm not a massive fan of beers with honey in. I drank this as part of some Zoom beers one night with some friends, Dave and Jill Ingram. I'm going to give you a mention because this was an inspired selection. I thought I'd hate it, and with that honey, I thought, I'm not sure about this. Cracked open the can, and immediately this smell hits you, this sweet cocoa chocolate flavour. And when I was a kid, I used to have a hot chocolate at my grand's house with honey in it on a night time, and this was like that. It was unbelievable. In fact, I went online after we'd had it and tried to track some more down, and everywhere was sold out except the beer shop in St Albans. They'd got 5 cans left, so I ordered all 5, a couple for me and 3 for Dave and Jill, and we're looking forward to them. It was really, really immense. 12% Imperial Stout. If you can get your hands on it from Untitled Art, then do it, because you will not be disappointed. So, Dave, over to you for your top 5.
Daftaboutcraft.
Well, I think firstly, before I will go slightly out of order, just because I think we do need to have a little bit of a conversation about Break Me Into Bigger Pieces. You had it at 4. I've actually got it at 2.
I wouldn't.
I'm quite surprised.
What did you rate it on Untapped, though? This is an interesting point.
I think I gave it 4.5.
Oh, I think I did as well.
I just loved it. I mean, as you say, that lemon and lime, it was there, but it was the smell, and the smell was exactly the same as the taste.
Yeah.
It was so good. The biggest compliment I can give it is someone who is unashamedly a checker of beer and will have one and done a lot of the time. I could easily have 6, 12 of those in the fridge and just have them time after time after time. It's such a seriously good beer, in keeping with a lot of Dea's beer. Generally, I'm not sure I've ever had a bad one from them. But to go back to the top 5, so I've actually got 5 and 4 a little bit interchangeable this month. You seem to have had a lot more variety. You've gone a lot more around the world and seem to have sampled a lot of more different styles, which perhaps reflects badly on me. But anyway, I've got 2 lagers. To start things off, I've got Great Northern Lager from Northern Monk and The Cold Condition from Wylam. They've both been out a little while, but with the weather now finally doing vaguely British summertime things and being warm from time to time, lager started to have a lot more appeal. I had actually both of these on separate occasions, but the consistent part of it was having them with a curry. and both worked so well. They are so much less gassy than, say, your standard beer you'd get in the curry house, your Kingfishers, your Cobras. Nice and sweet. They cut through the curry. Not complicated, but they don't need to be. I'd probably just shade it that the cold condition was slightly better, but it just went down that little bit easier. But both really good lagers, obviously quite inexpensive because of the style, so you could easily get a fridge full of these. Number 3 is a dipper. It was dry and bitter, and it was a collaboration with Fierce from Scotland, who I don't actually often have much to do with. That's not any slight on Fierce. I just generally don't seem to come into contact with their beers very often and have them, whereas dry and bitter I do quite like with Scandi brewers and have definitely had a few of theirs. This was Mirrored Signal, and what stood out to me is it had a really interesting hop combination. You've got Galaxy, YIT and Ukano. I apologise, probably butchered some pronunciations along the way there.
It is nice to find something different, a different hop. You see so much of your Simcoes and Citras and Mosaics. It makes a change when something else pops up, doesn't it?
That's it. It's just nice to see different. I think now, possibly because I've consumed an awful lot of beer during my time, that I want to see something different. I sort of crave it. I know everyone, I mentioned this earlier, everyone is doing variations on Citra, Simcoe and Mosaic, and they absolutely should. They're good hops, and you can do an awful lot with them, as we're seeing, but it is really nice to just see something a little bit different. What stood out with this is Galaxy did not dominate. I like Galaxy as a hop, but it can really take over a beer, and then it gets very bitter, very dank. This didn't. So it was just a slightly different dipper in what is a very saturated market, and it just stood out for me, and I'd definitely be looking to see about anything else from those guys. Finally, my number 1 for the month of July, having just talked about different hop varieties and how I'm all into them, is actually an old favourite, but it's just been turned up to 11, and it's Double Citra Fog by Burnt Mill. I had this actually the first time I went out to the pub, which may have influenced it perhaps, but probably not, because it is just a phenomenal beer.
Yeah, I've had it as well in the last month, and it may not have made my top 5, but it was good. I enjoyed it. It was up there, absolutely, and I can see why it's your number 1. It's probably a bit more your bag than mine, but it was very, very good.
I mean, I'm probably a little bit biased because Burnt Mill are very local to me, and I'm in a lucky position where we can get hold of stuff very fresh, and that definitely comes through. I've had some stuff which has been super fresh, and it really stands out. This was very fresh. It's just brilliant. I mean, I like Citra, but they doubled it up, and it's just an explosion of fruit. It's just, to use sort of some of the terms that go around, it is a haze bomb. It's hazy, it's fruity, it's tropical. It does exactly what you want it to. So it smacks you over the head with all the hops and all the fruit, and it's brilliant for it. I would have given it a 5. I didn't, purely because it was on can and not on tap. If it had been on tap, it would have got 5. It got 4.75. That's probably a little bit harsh, in fact, because I still keep thinking about it.
The way you're talking about it, that deserves to be right up there.
Yeah, the second can will probably get a 5. It's, just a great beer. I love Burnt Mill, and very much a fan of what pretty much all they do.
And what we're talking about, different breweries and our favourite beers, thought it might be a good time to mention the different days that breweries drop their new releases onto their websites. Bit of a handy pointer. And I can tell you that on Monday, that's Liquid Light Day. Wednesday, that's a day I've been looking forward to a lot over the last few weeks. It's Pomona Island Day, when they drop all their very cleverly named beers onto their website. Same day as North. And on Thursday each week, Track in Manchester make their new releases available, while Friday sees Pollys, Pressure Drop, Dare and Abbeydale make their latest releases available. Saturday's a quiet one, but Sunday, Vault City are back in town. They've revamped their web shop, they're back up and running again, and they've introduced a series of session sour beers, which they're selling. Well, they're dropping new ones every 2 to 3 weeks at the moment, so it's definitely worth looking out for them. The week they were back, of course, cost me a few quid when I had to get a box of their Ribena and Cloudy Lemonade. Very good they were as well. And also on a Sunday, Pentrich, who we were talking about earlier, of course, they make their new releases available as well. Now, a handy resource to look out for on the internet is This Week in Craft Beer. If you sign up on their website, they'll drop an email into your inbox each and every Monday morning detailing all the latest releases from a whole raft of breweries. And I must say thank you to them as well for including us mentioned in their podcast section on their websites and in a list of their favourite podcasts on the craft beer scene. So big up to you, and also a reminder to our listeners to check out your podcast.
Next time you're at the checkout and you hear that beep. Next time you're at the checkout and you hear that beep.
It's time for our
Next time you're at the checkout, supermarket
sweep feature. My fellow Dave can tell us all about it this month.
Let's get the immediate disclaimer in here. We are aware that this beer comes from a company that is owned by a macro, so boo hiss boo, but it's the one that stood out. It's the one that I've seen hanging around on socials and people have got into. It's by Goose Island. Now, Goose Island are owned by Anheuser-Busch. So, yes, we are dealing with a beer that is essentially craft, but in a macro guise. There's still something to be said for the brewing process, hopefully, that's gone on. We haven't tasted it yet. And just the concept as a whole deserves mention, in my opinion.
So it's Sophie from Goose Island, and it's a Saison brewed in 2017.
I wanted to give it a little bit of time just to see what was going to come out. And at the moment, I'm getting really potent... almost cider apple juice.
I've just spilt a little bit over the desk in front of me. Cider is the first word that comes to mind. Actually, once it's poured into the glass, it doesn't smell quite so cidery.
Yeah, but the cider actually has dropped off really quickly. And I must admit, I'm slightly disappointed in that. I was hoping it'd be quite astringent, quite strong, especially for something that's been, in theory, aging somewhere for 3 years. Now, it's not yeasty enough for me at all, unfortunately. It's very flat. It's a little bit tanniny right at the back, like it just sort of starts to coat the back of your teeth, but not like a red wine would or anything. But what happens in between is very little. It's a bit anonymous. I don't know, what are you getting?
I quite like a Saison. And as you pour it, it smells like one, which gives you plenty of hope. And then there's not a massive amount there once you actually... There's no taste explosions going on there for me. And like you say, that's had 3 years to do its thing.
You've got to wonder what yeast, if any, is being involved here, because I would expect a real yeasty infusion, especially if it's been given a bit more time to sit and just to develop.
You know what we need, don't you?
It's as flat as a pancake.
We need oysters. I watched a video on YouTube where this was... being drunk along with oysters being eaten, and I think we're missing those oysters. Maybe that would make the difference, or some nice French cheese perhaps. There's not a great deal going on there. It's pleasant. It's not unpleasant in any way whatsoever. I won't have a problem finishing the bottle. It's like there's a little bit in the middle that's missing.
I'm not impressed, no, and I did have quite high hopes for this.
Well, I think, we struck gold last month when we had Ella from Wildcard. We were really impressed with that. This, not so much, so it's... 1 for and 1 against in the supermarket stakes so far, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. It's just, there's that sort of slightly flat, cidery taste, and that's it, unfortunately.
Well, each and every month here on Daftaboutcraft, we're going to bring to you a recognised face from the craft scene to tell you what they've been up to in the last few weeks, and we're very, very happy to have with us today Arron from Pollys Brew Co in Mould in North Wales.
Good afternoon to the two Daves and to all the Daftaboutcraft listeners. It's Arron from Pollys Brew Co here, just reporting in from the Pollys cold store. It's 22 degrees outside at the moment, but 3 degrees in here. It's absolutely glorious. Just in the middle of packing up all of our outgoings for the 20th of July. So what's been going on at the brewery over the last 4 months? We went down to two members of staff, obviously put all of our brewers on furlough. We've been able to bring them back the first week of June and very rapidly scaled up from 2 brews every 10 days to twice a week to 5 times a fortnight to 3 times a week, and now we're at the point where we are on 3 brews 1 week and 4 brews the following week. This is facilitating us to be able to brew keg beer once again, which is an absolute godsend. I've missed keg beer so much. but still the majority of our beer is being pushed through to small pack and can. In terms of how busy we've been at the brewery, I don't think we've ever been busier. We just seem to routinely sell out at the moment. Anybody that has been trying to get hold of our beer and hasn't been successful, I am really, really sorry. It's not through want of trying. I do want everybody to get beer, but we're just unable to produce enough. I think the lockdown has put into perspective just how small we are in terms of a brewery. But at the same time, we've been able to refine what we do, and even going down to 3 brews a week has allowed us a little bit of extra time just to take some extra care on our beers. And in my opinion, I think we've gotten better by tenfold. In terms of upcoming news, we've got the aforementioned kegs coming back into regular routine. As soon as we've got more fermenting vessels, we'll be able to produce keg with a bit more regularity. We are in the process at the moment of moving into a unit next door, which will allow us to bring a bigger brew kit into the brewery, which means our brewers won't be working on our rickety old wood-bound kit that we've been using since day one. They'll be able to just brew once, and then that's it. That's their batch done for the day. Recent beer-wise, I've really, really been enjoying pretty much everything that we've been putting out at the moment, but special mention has got to go to a beer that we produced called Slow Burn. In my opinion, it's the best beer outside of our regular comfort zone of pale and hoppy. It's a dry hop Berliner Weiss, and man, it's perfect for a day like today where it's nice and warm out. Just crack it open, sink it really easy. So absolutely one of the best things that we've done for a very, very long time. Best beer that I've had from someone else recently is a really good one. I was lucky enough to try the New Barnes Oat Lager. In my opinion, that might be the best beer that I've had this year. Really, really impressed with how good that tasted. To be fair, everything that I've had from New Barnes up to now has been amazing. Big into our friends a bit further down the coast at Wild Horse. I think a lot of the stuff that they're putting out at the moment is just fantastic, and it feels nice to be able to drink beer out of some official Pollys branded glassware again, which is a welcome relief. We're finally not the worst brewery in the UK for merchandise anymore, and people can finally stop asking me the question because we actually have glassware now. Right, that's me checking out. I have got to get back to a pallet now, but I hope everybody stays safe. Continue buying our beer, continue supporting local bottle shops, and I will no doubt see all of you for a Meet the Brewer when this is all over. Take it easy, guys. Nice to chat.
Daftaboutcraft.
Right, it's that time of the podcast now. It gets very serious. And we ask the big question, is it hype or is it tripe? Basically, we look at one of the big beers from the last month, one that's been everywhere. Lots of people have been talking about it on forums, here or there and everywhere. And we taste it and see if it lives up to the hype or whether it is, in fact, tripe.
So this month, we have gone for Metric Tunnocks, which is a collaboration between Glen Affric Brewery, but it's a collab with the Craft Beer Channel, a YouTube channel. But they came together and have collaborated a beer which essentially should taste like the favourite of many people's childhoods and even adulthood.
Definitely.
Tunnocks Bar.
But the unique thing about this beer is that it's trying to be, well, it is, in fact, an imperial stout. It's a non-pastry stout because there are no adjuncts, there's no wafer, there's no caramel, there's no chocolate. They haven't opened up the vat and thrown in a big wedge of Tunnocks chocolate bars. That hasn't happened. They've tried to replicate the taste with just malt and malt alone. In fact, a whole metric ton of malt. hence metric tonics.
The concept is brilliant. Non-adjunct brewing, well, we'll see. It might be that there's a very good reason people have thrown adjuncts in to make this stuff, but I love the idea.
And at a time when beers have so many different adjuncts in them, you wouldn't be surprised if you found anything in your beer these days. What a great idea to try and brew something, the flavour of which everybody knows, but without using that actual flavour to get the flavour. Very clever. But does it do it? Is it Hype or Tripe? That's the question. We've both got a can in front of us. I've cracked open my can. My fellow Dave over there has cracked his. He's poured it into the glass. So, what is the verdict?
Oh, it's very roasty. That's crikey. Oh, that is a big hit of flavour at the end, but it's a roasty flavour. I don't ever remember having a tonics which tasted like that. Let's see if it settles down a bit, but God, it blew my head off. Not in the way I expected it to.
I've got the added benefit of seeing his face while he's saying this to us, and he looks surprised.
It's 9.5. It's an Imperial, so I'm not going to base it all on the first taste. Dave,
this is one of these things. Yet? That first taste can sometimes be very different to the taste you get by the time you get to the end of the 440 mils. It can be quite different. Now, I noted down here that toasted oats and muscovado sugar are massive amounts of them in there, and if you smell, I haven't poured mine out yet. If you smell the can, you do get both of those. So let me pour it. See what I get. Yeah, I mean, I've got to say, it does pour quite thin.
It's possibly a burnt tonics bar.
A one that's been in the oven too long.
Maybe. I mean,
now if I'm just giving this,
I can't get away from the burnt roasty malt. If that's all, it dominates my palate.
Before I taste it, if you were given this drink and you didn't know what it was, would you drink it and say, "Ooh, that's tonics in a glass"?
No. If I didn't know what it was or what it was trying to be, I'd say this is Imperial Coffee Stout.
Okay.
I think. Like something where there might be the word espresso featuring in there, you know, something along the lines of we threw a load of coffee beans from somewhere in this and really got that roasty barista fresh flavour. That's
right.
That's what I'm getting. There's precious little sweetness in there for me.
I've just taken my first mouthful. I don't dislike it. I'm not a massive fan of anything that's too roasty. Doesn't taste like a tonics bar, but it's enjoyable. But for me, that is not a tonics. So
swirling in the glass, I can see just how thin it is as well, which is a real shame.
The whole point of this exercise for the Craft Beer Channel and Glen Affric was to try and replicate that style without all the adjuncts. I mean, I talk a lot about a beer achieving what it sets out to achieve, and it probably doesn't do that. But does it live up to the hype? That's the whole point of this segment. I think there has to be some middle ground here, and I think this sits nicely in that middle ground. It just doesn't quite achieve what the guys set out to achieve with it, that's all.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way of looking at it. I'd probably come down on slightly the harsher side of it in that on this evidence, there's a reason people are putting adjuncts in beer because it just makes it a bit better. This is all right. It's not a tonics.
It doesn't quite hit the mark. Not a tonics in a can. It looks like a tonics from the can art, but it just doesn't quite make it. Certainly not in the hype category. So there you have it. There is episode 2 of Daft About Craft, the craft beer podcast. And we really hope you've enjoyed what you've heard tonight. Our top 5s for the month of July. A sweep of the supermarket shelves. Our Brew To Me feature. And everything else you've heard. I really hope you've enjoyed what you've been listening to.
Yeah, it's been an enjoyable episode. I don't know if perhaps we've had any belting beers out of those, which is a shame, but you know, hopefully reflective of the scene as a whole. There's always going to be some great beers, and there's always going to be some beers that don't quite get there. Hopefully we've been honest enough to give an opinion on those so it feels like you're getting a good experience and not one where we just say everything is amazing. But we will be back next month and we will have a whole new load of beers to review.
This is the thing, you never quite know what is coming out in the next few weeks, and we could be talking about anything in a month's time.
Exactly. It's so fast moving. There's lots to talk about. There's going to be a whole new load of beers, and a load is right because there's so many coming out right now from everywhere. And we'll be sampling lots, but we'd love to hear what you're sampling and just any feedback you have on the show, if there's stuff you want to hear more of, less of, or any thoughts at all, we'd love to hear them. You can get hold of us on Twitter at Daftaboutcraft1 with a capital D, Instagram, Daftaboutcraft1 with a lowercase d, and we've also got a Facebook page, which unsurprisingly is Daftaboutcraft.
So please do try and get in touch with us. Anything you want to hear on here, any suggestions, ideas, if you just want to have a word with us about something you've been drinking and you want us to pick up the thread and talk about it, we'll be more than happy to do that. So please do get in touch. We'll be back in a month's time, the first Monday of September. You'll be able to download the next edition of Daftaboutcraft, episode number 3. And we very much look forward to speaking to you then. All the best until next time.
Goodbye.
Daftaboutcraft.